Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show. And as I wrap up this mini tour of Circles Around the Sun, I get a chance today to speak to a father and son who are continuing the lineage of Indian classical and folk music in their own way. They have their own individual sound, and at the core, they are both teachers and incredibly humble. Ashwin and Keshav, Batish, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. So while you're pointing this way, you can also point a little bit upwards and you'll see my father.
He will be in the shot the entire
He's
time.
the founder. So he's
Thank
the
you.
guy we get the lineage from. And actually from before him, his teacher is Chandan Ramcharan from Patiala, a very enlightened teacher. And a lot of the compositions that we learned initially from my father were from his Guruji.
Were you able to meet him, his Guruji?
No, I was very young at that time. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the food on the trips that your dad would take you on, the eggs that would come out.
Oh my God!
The hard-boiled eggs. You know,
So,
because
okay,
your
so-
dad, the line from your father.
Yes.
Good food and good music.
Good food and good
Amen.
music. They go together, yes. So as a child, ever since I could travel, I remember this. I don't know why, because there are 5 kids. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, but he chose me. So I was always with him ever since. I just didn't want to let him go. I hang on to his hand and I'm on. So every tour he went to, well, literally everyone, is that I was, a part of his, like a little sidekick kind of thing.
No kindergarten or anything. Just go right to.
No, there's no kindergarten.
Yeah,
in
I
India.
like it. I like it.
It's
Yeah.
a very Western concept. In India.
Yeah, I know. This was experiential. I love it.
But the kindergarten is with dad, dad garden or mom garden, I guess. But yeah, so the beautiful thing is that I just got to meet almost everybody in the industry, not knowing until a long time later that I was, literally in the presence of some of the biggest names and everything. But what came out of this was my ability to, grasp things of the musical nature at an earlier age. That was like my lesson, but I didn't realize it. I was in Asha Bhonsle. She was a very famous singer, but my father took me to her house, and her husband was an avid fisherman, and so I still remember the fish they handed me. Big fish from the lake that he had gotten, frozen. So I took that home. But what I'm saying is, meeting people like that was a normal thing for me. And so, but traveling with him was just a joy because I would be in trains, I would be in, people's cars that were driving around in taxis and tongas. It was just incredible. And scooters, I mean, that's the basic mode of transportation in India. If you're going short distances, you hop on a scooter. So yeah, so I was literally, I wish that I had a chance to do that to my kids also.
Well, I mean, Keshav, let me ask you, can you talk about how your dad sort of had his own way of how did he teach you?
By not teaching me.
Explain that to cats who are
yeah.
going to see this, because I think the micromanaging today and the sort of hovering kind of thing. If you give an example, it'd be great.
Yeah, so
And then I'll give you an example also.
Yeah, no, he knows. He has many
he's
examples.
gonna lay into me. So
I
it's
know.
not happening. But what happened with me was at about, I think, was it 6 or 7? He was playing some music in that room over there, and I started drumming along to it on a filing cabinet, something like that.
Yeah.
And because it just happened through osmosis.
Yeah.
That's why this is, I mean, every bit of real knowledge that exists out there is oral tradition, and case in point, the knowledge I ingested just by being around the folks here, my grandfather, grandmother, aunts, uncles, dad. I mean, it all worked its way into my body. Talk about embodiment, right? So by the time I was about 7 or 8, I was just playing rhythms out on that filing cabinet.
Oh, even earlier than that, Keshav.
Well, I was dancing. I don't remember that stuff.
Well, okay, so Keshav, let me tell you. Born, he was right behind the sitar. I took a picture of him, right?
Oh yeah.
He doesn't know all this stuff. But then he's in my rocking chair. He's not going to sleep. Guess what? Daddy is singing him ragas.
I love it.
Ragas that are composed by my father, like in he did 700 compositions. So whatever I knew, I would sing to him. He had a knowledge of about 150 ragas by the time he was 3 years old. I asked him to sing a rag, and my dad said, "How did he learn this?" But little does he know that I was singing to him like nursery rhymes.
Right.
Okay, so indoctrination and in getting knowledge is not a forced thing, but if you enjoy it, you're gonna grab it sooner. So that's my philosophy of teaching. If I can play something worth anything, he's not gonna learn it. But if I can, I'm not gonna use that word kick his butt or anything, because this is not about that. This is about playing something at a higher level, not to show off, but to show them what is possible.
Right.
And then he would aspire to doing that thing. See, I think that's, when you said osmosis, I think that's exactly what it is. That
Yeah,
it kind of goes that way.
I wanted to interject
Yeah.
one thing, because I was talking to my friend in the band last night, and he was talking about scat singing, essentially, and he goes, "I don't think you should play anything that you can't sing." So the idea there is that that's a very much that's Indian, where you are singing those ragas,
Yeah.
and then it comes out in the instrumentation or in the rhythm.
Right.
Yes, exactly, because instrumentation in India is always subordinated to singing. And I think it's culturally like that, although I've seen singers try to emulate a saxophone player or a trumpet player over here. In India, it's always the singer that it's the head of the thing. So if you can sing something, you can then take it out on an instrument.
Exactly.
And our music is so like I won't say intellectual. It's more like a soulful, and the soul only comes when the voices get involved, when your mind gets involved. When you start thinking and emotions come out. You see, sa re da se da re da re da re da. If you go like that, and I emulate it on the sitar. Sa sa ni ni sa re re sa. Now, if you're singing this thing normally. So I'm not just playing an instrument. It's my dad's voice is hauntingly coming behind. And so, see, now, when I started, it was very kind of rough. But as soon as his voice creeps in, this is my father's voice. So he just lays it in, right? And so now when I'm playing, I'm very crude, very thin. But when I suddenly play, his voice, and so that's the indoctrination. That's the way he comes and channels through me. And that's exactly what is happening, is we are tuning into elements. Now, if I've heard my father and I've heard 20 other people singing the same line, all of them start channeling through me. So, learning is not just the path that is shown by a teacher. It's also the path that the teacher shares of everything around, which means that how does that person do it? How does that person do it? That should not be an issue. Some people will limit their learning
That's
to
right.
their own,
That's
their
absolutely
own
right.
thing. But the true learning comes when you hear many ways of doing the same thing, and then you are the one that goes out and says it in your way.
Keshav, you said before the only real knowledge is from an oral tradition.
Right.
Can you explain? That's fascinating to me. Synthetic knowledge or artificial knowledge is not real knowledge.
Well,
I mean, what did you mean by explain what you mean by real knowledge?
So, a mentor of mine within the American traditions of music,
Yes.
Black or creative music, Hafiz Mudirzadeh, he has spent some time with the Lakota people of South Dakota, or on
The Indians, Native Americans,
the occupied land.
Absolutely. Yep.
So this is really their land that we're on. Just
The indigenous
clear,
cats,
indigenous
yeah,
land.
absolutely.
So the Lakota chiefsman David Swallow Jr. said that the reason that we lack trust in the written word is that it was created under the pretext that we can't trust. So then, therefore, we have to write it down. So these indigenous cultures, like from South Asia, where we come from, or from the people of this land, or any indigenous root, are operating under the supposition of trust and telling the truth. So the written code, while that's kind of a rather modern precept was actually, kind of like a it was more of a contract than it was
Absolutely.
like a historical document. Because when we talk about document, I mean, the person that sits in front of you is the library or the source. Like if you look at my grandfather, I mean, he knew languages of Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi, Braj Bhasha, Sanskrit,
Multiple, yeah.
Oh.
and then he could interpret these things.
And he
you know
was
what I mean?
fluent in English. He was fluent in.
I'm sorry. How many languages did he? Is it 20? How many languages?
Okay, so before the Britishers, spread English,
Yeah.
the language that was common was Sanskrit. So Sanskrit. Then following that, with the invasion of the Muslim, we had a Sanskrit and Urdu mixture, which became Hindi.
What was it
So-
called? Urdu?
Urdu.
Urdu. Okay, and that became
Urdu
Hindi.
is like Persian dialect, but
Wow.
a little different. But so then the Urdu and so Urdu was a culmination. The Hindi was a culmination of Urdu and Sanskrit, and then of course the Britishers came in. So he had to learn Urdu in his school, and he was a better Urdu speaker and learner than any of his friends who were also Muslims, including the teacher's son, so who was made the monitor of the class. And this is, my dad would say this proudly, that in a competition my dad won, and so his son got dethroned. And so that's how good my dad was in Urdu, just to give you an idea.
Wow.
So Urdu is like shorthand, it's written backwards, like this. And he could write, while you're speaking, he could write everything down. That's how fast my dad was in writing that language down. Anyway, so then Sanskrit was from his father, who was a Pandit, a priest, an advisor to the community. And so he had to learn all the Sanskrit shlokas and things like that. Then Hindi he learned because he had to converse in Hindi. We are in India, it's a national language. And then we lived in in Bombay, which is Maharashtra, so
Right.
he also studied Marathi. And so, what I'm saying is he was, a multilingual person. Brij Bhasha, which is the ancient knowledge and the language of the people of Uttar Pradesh, Banaras and stuff like that. He was fluent in that. And he was a movie director. So he actually learned all these, not just for himself, but also to compose songs to teach all the singers that he was going to hire for a movie or scene or something like that. So he was, incredible. And he wrote all these in his works, so, which I hope to share with.
Of course.
The
So,
listeners
I
will
mean,
see.
I mean, we were, Keshav. I feel in you a direct lineage to your grandfather, and I just wonder, in your mind, even though you're pretty young still, how, in your own way, will you honor his legacy, and will you continue to keep his legacy alive? He obviously, the word master gets thrown around, but he was obviously beyond this planet, and he was kind of in the intergalactic to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just breathing, honestly.
Breathing.
Yeah, I think just as long as I'm breathing and I'm here, I'm doing my work. So I've
Do you feel pressure at all in terms of musically, or has the music always just, once you kind of got your rudiments, did it always just kind of come through you? What I'm saying is, to me, you have this family lineage that would be intimidating to a degree, and I just wonder if you ever felt any pressure at all.
Yeah, it was only intimidating when I met people who didn't. It only dawned on me what I have here when others showed me their perspective of myself, which I think is the crux of most of this distress that we're in as a society, is that we're so concerned about the projections of others, of ourselves that others put back onto us,
Absolutely.
than just being present in our own nature. So I mean, the music just comes out of being present. And
Keshav is a
so
natural.
if I'm
He
here,
is he is natural, right? I mean, that's
Well,
like,
he used to sit when he was very young. My father is practicing upstairs, and he's a child in a crib. But as soon as he can walk out of the crib, guess where he is? He crawls up the stairs and right in front of his grandfather. And my father is playing his veena, which is right here, and practicing or singing, and then he's got his eyes closed, and he'll open his eyes and says, "Oh, Keshav, what are you doing?" And he's just sitting there. So Keshav has been immersed in music since birth, and we were so proud to see, Of course, we were all, after we found out he did this trick once, then we were all following him to make sure he doesn't fall down the stairs. But
That's how we
literally,
that's
you
how we
were
learned,
doing it.
right?
You were kind of going like this.
I remember.
And just crawling up
Yeah.
the flight of stairs.
I remember.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
It's very hard to be yourself today because of the projection or the perception that people have, not just of you, but just in general. People have a hard time, especially on the bandstand, expressing their own individual sound.
Yeah.
Where are you at with your own individual sound? In terms of like, I don't know. You listen to, I can't really speak to tabla players, but you listen to some of the great jazz drummers of all time. You
Yes.
you can tell Max Roach from Pete LaRocca, from Tony Williams to,
Right.
all those cats had their own sound, and I feel like that's kind of one of the definitions of success. And I just wonder where you're at with your own. Clearly, your father has his own sound.
Absolutely. Well, I think ultimately we're all born with our own sound. It's more of the case of like unlearning those projections that brings us back to
That's right.
where we've always been.
So, but I mean, talk about the. You're in the academy. Doesn't that conformist sort of, at least the cats that I've interviewed, primarily from your dad's generation and even older, they would like leave Berkeley like 3 years in because there was so much work.
Yeah.
The academy, it was a place, maybe it was a trade school. You'd learn a new instrument, or maybe you'd come off the road and kick a drug habit. You'd take a class. But it wasn't like everything was happening within the four walls.
Right.
So how do you keep that semblance of osmosis, if that might be the wrong word, how do you keep that organic learning style within the academy and then translate it over? I assume you're going to maybe have some students, and how you work with them.
Well, I think the key of my work is to recognize that the only real texts that exist and have existed in our society is the physical people and not the stories that we write about them, because those stories are of the people, right? So my idea working in an academy is just to tell stories of the people that I meet and the people that I mentor myself to, and then maybe that's my contribution to showing the academy that trust is within the people, not in the word we write down about them.
It's all the books. There's so many books, and then Ashwin, I want to ask you this question. Coming up, you were auditory learner. Today we are saturated with visual material. And a lot of it is really mediocre. So it's hard to sift through what is really high quality visual material. How do you work with cats to unlock their ears if they learn to read music before they learned to hear music?
You mean in teaching or with
Because I would say your dad was probably an autodidact, and you were as well. And most of the cats that I know, they came up learning by ear, and so their ears were never locked. But now, when you learn to read before you hear, and I'm talking like horn players and people like that.
Right.
There's a reason why there's a homogenization of sound. I'm talking about in specifically like jazz, for instance. I wonder, how do you work with kids to sort of break that?
So, yeah, I hear you, and I think that is again a very Western concept.
If you excuse me,
because written music is so much the norm over here. You go through great works. Of course, you cannot.
I'm
deny
with you,
that they're
man.
Great
Yeah,
works.
no.
And you are definitely going to benefit by studying them, by getting. So written works are beautiful because you can take them apart, and you can visually see everything, and you can take little elements of it and take them out of context. Now with these screens, you can go like this and put them on a different screen. It's all high tech, multimedia. But at the heart of it, what exactly are, by showing them different elements, yes, the awareness level goes up, and then you bring it all back together. Yes, they do learn from it, and they see how the whole is connected and everything. All those are good things, and of course in a society where an orchestral work or a band or multi people, banding together to make one, that's a very legitimate way to look at it. And that's why I actually love notations myself and to put things down on paper for my band members so they can actually see. But when everything is done and said, we still end up on stage without any paper in front of us.
Exactly.
And I think that's where the magic is.
Well, that's I mean, that's.
And so,
Yeah.
I asked my father, how do you write for an orchestra? Because he used to write for a 40-piece orchestra for Bollywood. And he says, it's simple. You just take what you play and you break it up into multiple instruments.
So easy for him to say that.
Yeah. And so, this is the nature of what it is. So if you take the whole thing, the multi things that you see and visually check out, everything boils down to a melody and rhythm. The element of harmony comes in the Western concept. In our concept, harmony is a given. You hear harmonies everywhere. Like I was telling you on the sitar, remember when I played the notes, all the sympathetic strings reverberate. They're self-harmonization.
Right.
Exactly.
You see? So,
Right.
but if you now break it up and take the self-harmonization and actually highlight them, make them louder, now you have a 3-part harmony or a barber shop or something like that. You can hear those harmony lines moving. But in India, we come back down to like, where are we? So forget Bollywood, go back to the tradition of Indian music. It's one-on-one. You have a lead player, which is melody. You have a drummer, just like how you heard it. You heard the sitar and tabla play. And do we need anything else beyond that? See, this is the whole question, is whether you call this music Indian music or an ancient form of music or what we hear 2 people playing. You can't call it anything.
Right.
But at the heart of it, it's a complete music.
Right.
So if you take elements of it and make many people play it, it's still, my father called it a centripetal and centrifugal.
Yeah.
So you can go outwards or you can come inside. But
I
the whole
love
thing, in his words, was we all try to reach the organ point. Organ point means everything in unison.
Right.
You see?
Wow.
Now,
So-
what's profound,
Yeah.
what you're saying too, is that if you think of, Ornette Coleman talked about unison, or not in this like colonized sense of unison as like we all play the same note,
Right.
but we're talking about like a cosmic unison.
Yeah.
You know, that
Absolutely.
when he and Don Cherry would play these melodies together, they were playing something in a soulful unison, and it was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the lines were together, but it was also like this togetherness, like everybody.
It was called harmonic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a nice name.
That was Ornette called it.
Oh, right.
That was the
Yeah,
merging
yeah.
of the two.
And when you break that down,
Yeah.
it's harmony, motion, and melody.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
harmony, harmolodic.
Yeah. So all this is
That's the
such a
crux of it.
beautiful thing. Even in our culture, you see, the rhythm is given a 50% value.
Right.
Because rhythm in itself is the complete other axis of melody. You see, people don't realize that rhythm is melody and melody is rhythm. But if you take this thing and speed it up, it becomes a note. The faster you play it, like if you take a motorcycle and you go rat tat 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 tat, vroom, you hear that note coming, that's the note. So
Right.
melody is beats.
Right.
But how do you assess? Every note is a beat. You see? You have this harmonics, you have 5th harmonics, you have 3rd harmonic. These are all beats. The ratios that are vibrational, and you see these waves, sine waves, and you see all these nodes, and you go, oh, this is the sine wave, and it has, if you vibrate a wire, you see all these, I don't know if you ever noticed that thing, but
Yeah.
the frequencies come
Sure.
into view, right? You see a visual of the frequency. So what I'm saying is that everything connects at that level. Harmony is a different animal though. Harmony is what we inherently hearing, not inherently hearing, what is the word for it? You are actually hearing it like, it's something hovering around the main note. So if I go like this, or if I go, see if you hear, you hear that? All these lower strings, like these ones, they're picking and choosing which one to harmonize. Now every one of
Right.
them are going to harmonize because they're all a series of, what do you call those series? The harmonic series?
Right.
Eventually all the harmonic series will trigger some of those notes if they're
Right.
tuned properly, right? So embedded in this one note is everything. So in Indian music, we imagine the harmonies more than we hear the harmonies really, boldly put in front of us, you see. So yeah, so the melody.
Or another way to think of it is the harmonies are the fragmented version of what's
Yeah, thank
part
you.
of here, you know.
That's a beautiful.
Dude, I
thing
mean,
to say.
you guys are talking to a rogue, non-musician rogue journalist way over my head, but I mean, this is gonna. Keshav, before I let you go, you got to get on the road.
Yeah, yeah.
This is so important because, one of the L's. I have 4 L's on my program, and
Yeah.
one of them is leadership. And I just wanted you to talk about how your dad was what were the qualities of leadership that he had, and what do you think the qualities of leadership are most effective and important in today in 2022?
I think leading through intuition and curiosity rather than a subscribed, essentially premeditated idea of like what each person is supposed to do and what each person is supposed to contribute to society. If you think about, again, the oral tradition, like if you start with a story and then you do like, the game of telephone, where you sit in a circle and you start telling so when the story comes back to you, it is a different story, but it still has components of the first story that was told. But what's changed? It's each person has added their own essence into the story. So by the time it comes back around to the observer, they have already observed every single person's contribution within that final story that's been told, and the story keeps going. So I think leadership is a lot like that, in that as we prepare the next generation to take on the challenges of what they're going to face, it's all about telling them that you have to lead with your sense of intuition
and curiosity,
And
which is
curiosity.
antithetical to the way we are driven in this culture, which is
Right.
about textbooks. There's one way to do it, and
Right.
that is a leap of faith. But you would say that your father always would he say to you, trust your instinct, trust your intuition, and not, you don't have.
He never said it. He only showed it to me. So I'd be playing sitar, and then he'd come in and say, "Fix that note." So I say, "Okay," and I'd
Exactly
fix
what
it.
my dad did to me.
Right.
They never once told me that this is Hindustani music, because it's not. It's the music of Ashwin Batish. It's the music of Shiv Dalba. It's the music of Guru Hakim Chandraram Charan. It's the music of Pandit Malikarjun Mansur. I mean, these folks are. That's what I'm saying. They are the library.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no tradition. They are the tradition.
You see, the whole concept of music is fluid, and people don't realize it. So yes, we do have a tradition. Yes, there's an ancient lineage and ancient compositions which are beautiful.
Right.
But we also have to say that rag, as we know it today, and rag as we knew it 1,000 years ago, is not the same thing. Instruments we know today, and instruments we knew 1,000 years ago. Not somebody sees this instrument, and that pulling and this whole reverberation was not existing 1,000 years ago. This is a new instrument.
Right.
I like how you look at this. It's relatively new.
Yeah. Everything is fluid, so you can't really say. And also, my father says something very important, is if you have a pool of water and you leave it alone, it'll stagnate.
Right.
Only when you let fresh water into it will it retain its freshness.
Absolutely.
And so that's the philosophy of what he taught me, and I'm teaching him, because we don't like stagnation. But learn what this original stuff is. If he didn't learn the tabla, how ta, tin, titta, kitta, ghidin, naga, all that went, he would not be playing what he's doing right now. You see?
Absolutely. No, and I would just say that, my message to both of you, especially you, Ashwin, when you feel comfortable, is to go back into the water of live music, because the atrophy, we don't want anything to atrophy. I mean, and I say this to all my people that are hesitant, and it's fine when you're ready. That's my only message, and I think that's the message from your father. And I just want to say I can't wait to come back and do another set with you guys. You guys are total badasses. Thank you so much, man.
Thank
You
you.
rock, man. And it's equally
Appreciate it.
important that you showed up.
Yeah.
The essence of everything is showing up, and that's all we really need to do. It's a lot more simple than people think it is. So thank you for showing up today.
Much love to both of you, and ultimately showing up with authenticity, sincerity, and then being able to inspire. And that's all I care about, is that people will see this and try to be themselves. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
It's a pleasure as always. Thank you so
The
much.
Jake Feinberg Show. We'll
right.
see you later.